Swamiji, we can start now.
Okay, okay.
Okay, okay.
So now we are coming to Bhakti Yoga. Now the root of moksha is jnana. Jnana comes through Shiva and Saraswati. Shiva comes with the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. What is the root of that Om Namah Shivaya? The root is Om. The speech of your guru is the root of the mantra. That is, Om is the guru. The guru has no qualities. You don't look at that guru and say, oh, he's tall, he's fair, he's got a pimple somewhere. That is only the physical body. And he might have his own personal life also. But when he comes as your guru, any person comes as your guru, then the Omkar flows through him and gives you the instruction at that moment. So because we can't see the Omkar, we take whichever mantra he gives us as his words. And his word, the speech is the root of the mantra. So first, guru has no qualities, even though he might have a physical body. He takes bodies for transmission of knowledge. That means I cannot say, okay, I'm going to be a guru. You cannot say you're going to be a guru. The Omkar has to choose you because you're pure in a particular way. Omkar, the Pranava, has to choose you to be a guru in such and such a situation. That is why when somebody says, I am a guru, even the greatest gurus will say, I'm not a guru. Because they are not referring to themselves, they are referring to the pranava, that is the omkar, that is flowing through them. So the guru is pranava. His body is the kundalini. Kundalini means a serpent that is 3.5 uh, turns. What are those 3.5 turns? It is the lower world, that is a Bhur Bhuva Swaha, then the middle, Mahar, then Jana, Tapa, Satyam, these three, plus the Nada that comes with it. That Nada is an original part of creation. That is his body, not the physical body you see. That body comes into this person's body if he is being made as a guru by the pranava. So that is what you have to understand about the guru. And why I'm telling you about the guru is for today we are going to talk about Shabari, and we will talk about different um, people every day with stories, so that we can understand each day what are the specific aspects of bhakti yoga that we need to cultivate. So they say jnana karma samuchaya bhakti. That is, when you have jnana yoga, when you are doing karma yoga, for example, you are doing actions. Why are you doing actions? So you can have swadhyaya. And by swadhyaya, you're thinking, why am I getting upset with this person? Why do I get frustrated if the work doesn't finish? So you go on like that and you're understanding yourself. And you're thinking, okay, I didn't do it perfectly. So what a sinner I must be. And as you go, the jnana comes to you that God has made you exactly the way He wants you to be. He does not want you to be perfect. He is perfection, He is completion. You cannot be perfect. You have your shortcomings. We call it shortcomings because in the world it's inconvenient. But according to God, He has made you exactly the way He wants you because He's creating like a fabric. You know, you have a black thread, you have some places where there is no thread, some red thread, some green and blue together, like that. So that jnana comes to you when you're doing karma yoga with Shraddha, and you realize over a period of time that nobody and nothing is good, nobody and nothing is bad. It is just the way it is. It is beautiful to see, like a woven cloth. So, what is the jnana that comes? The jnana that comes is to cross the river, you sit in the boat. right? If you want to cross any river, you sit in a boat. Rowing is not your problem. Somebody else is rowing the boat. You don't have to worry whether he will row it properly. If he does, he know rowing, will he be capsized in the middle of the river? You don't have to depend upon anything like that, because the pranavam that has become the entire universe, including the water, including the boat, including you, all that is present in the boatman who is your guru. So such gurus say that yoga practice itself is a form of bhakti. Why? Because you shut down your mind, you shut down your senses in meditation, but you don't go blank. You fill the mind with thoughts of the divine. So when you fill your mind with thoughts of the divine will come to you in the form of a guru. Now, when you go to see what exactly is the description, the definition of bhakti, the best person to go to is Narada, because Narada has written the Bhakti Sutras also. In all the main sutras, like you have Brahma Sutra, Jaimini Sutra, Karma Kandas, Jnana Sutra, Kama Sutra, everything will start with a word called Ataha, like Patanjali. Ataha, now then it means. That is, you have done so much, you have come to this point. Okay, now I will tell you the practice, or I will tell you about this topic. Because they won't, at the minute you go and sit, the guru will look at you, he will accept you, he will prepare you first. And after he has prepared you, then you get the anugraha, which can be jnana or bhakti or whatever. That is why when you come to a place like an ashram and do karma yoga, it's different from doing the same work in the house. Because in the house, the idea is you go to an ashram, you bring in that swadhyaya, and you take the divine into your heart. And having taken the divine into the heart, you go back home with the divine. Now, your home becomes an ashram. Your home can become a temple. You put the guru in the house. Your guru is also part of your family. Now you will see your family in a different way. So, Ataha, having got certain qualities, but you haven't got spiritual satisfaction. So, the disciple must now walk the path of bhakti. Okay. Now, in this, the definition Narada says is Parama Prema Swarupa Bhaktihi. What does that mean? Parama Prema. So we would think it, in general, it means the total love, unconditional love. So he'll use the word Asmin to explain what that is. Asmin means in that Parama Prema. In such a love, what happens? All the concepts of God are there. God inside me, inside you, God who is beyond us, God with form, without form. All this, everything becomes God for you. Everything becomes divine. Then there is a fascination that pulls you. That is what the name of Hari is. Hari means, one of the meanings of Hari is that it pulls you towards itself uncontrollably without your being able to resist it. That sort of pulling towards itself is what is called Hari. That's why we said that Hari is the Omkar. Tat, that is the truth. So now you have, what is the nature of this prema? First, it is of the nature of immortality. Amrita Swarupa. This is Narada saying. Why Amrita Swarupa? The person will go on looking at all the objects that you are able to look at in ordinary life, the Indriyas. experience something that is happy, which is constantly changing, which brings sorrow. So you turn from the changing world and you look at the changeless divine. When you start looking at the changeless divine, your sense of mortality and your fear of death disappears because you say, He is there for me. Nothing will happen to me. We are doing this now, no, with Corona or any difficulty that comes. We always go straight and we'll pray and we'll say, He is with me. Nothing will happen to me. Such is your faith. Then Siddho Bhavati. Now, Siddhi here is a perfection of bhakti. It is not calculated by ethical or moral standards. So you might say that man is a drunkard. How can he be a bhakta? It is not for you to say. When he is drunk, he might be thinking all the time about the divine. He might be extremely compassionate. You don't know what the parameters are, but he knows. So do not judge anybody. This, when you see somebody bad, somebody ugly, say this is God in the form of Yogamaya who has created this situation so that I learn something from it. Maybe patience, maybe titiksha. You see how all of it comes into Jnana Yoga. So Siddho Bhavati, you become perfect, complete, just like the divine. Amrito Bhavati, immortal. Tripto Bhavati. Tripta, there are two things, Tripti and Tushti. Tripti means you are contented, but Tushti means fulfilled. With Tushti, you don't even bother anymore. With Tripti, today you're contented, tomorrow you want to have again one darshan. You see, go to the temple, you're so happy in the temple, tomorrow again you want to go and see. 10 years later, again you want to go and see. So contentment also is a fluctuating thing. But that will be the nature of yourself. When does it happen? When you get bhakti. So Jesus will say, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you. Now you have to see, and all else he says. He doesn't say, so that something is given to you. You don't seek so that something is given to you. That is trade. We say, no, I'll break 20 coconuts. Please make me pass the examination. That is trade. There you are a merchant. When you get the kingdom of God, or when you get the bhakti in you, you don't crave for anything else other than the divine. So whatever you are looking for, supposing you're looking for jewelry, you're attached to your children, you're attached to your husband, wife, parents, you will see all this as a form of God in different people, so that it helps you to refine your bhakti towards Him. That is called Vishwarupa Darshana. Now, once you get that sort of feeling, you're so happy and you're so satisfied, your devotion gets perfected. And that bhakti or love is its own fulfillment. You don't need anything else. Once you have given away, Krishna will say, one who has given away his heart to me, he after that claims nothing other than me. Neither Brahmatvam, nor Indratvam, nor emperorship, nor kingdoms, nor siddhi, not even moksha. In other words, he's saying the man is so rich in his love. No difficulty is harsh. In Mukundamala, the poet says, what is there whether I go to heaven or to hell, or I suffer anywhere? You are with me all the time. So where is the suffering? That's what he asks. When Sita wanted to go to the forest with Rama, he said, your feet are so tender and you will miss the home and all. She said, wherever you are, that is heaven for me. I want to come there. So the person does not desire anything. He does not grieve for anything that is lost. He doesn't hate anybody. He is not terribly excited when something good comes. If you see Swami Niranjan, when he got the Padma Padma, what was that? Padma Bhushana award, he was not jumping up and down. He said, I'm dedicating it to my Guru and to all the people who have helped carry on the Guru's mission. And that was it. And it was put inside one place in the ashram and nobody bothered about it. So, such a person, um, on arrival and departure of sense organs, he just sees it as a play of God. He'll say, aha, look at this Maya. It's coming dancing. It's fun. Look at Maya. It's creating trouble. That's okay. This will also go. Nothing is permanent. So he has only one desire, that is his love for the Lord should increase. Now there are many ways to get into this love that you understand. So today we are going to take the story of Shabari because she had complete faith in her Guru. So we'll start with the Guru because Guru is our nearest being to the Supreme Atma, Paramatma. Anybody or anything that puts you in touch with the Paramatma is Guru. The pranava is flowing through it at that time. That is why Dattatreya says, I have 24 gurus. Meaning when he looked at so many things, suddenly that higher jnana came to him. And he said, oh, I learned this from the earth. I learned how to have titiksha from the earth. I learned about something else from the bird. Like that, all these joined together to prepare him because all of them came as pranava. Now, whenever you want to allow the Guru to work with you to give you bhakti, the first main thing is you have to trust your Guru. Very important. We are not able to trust people, anybody, because something has happened at some time that when you were happy, then something you made yourself vulnerable and somebody did something which was not in your expectation. So you got upset or terrified in your life or in many lifetimes and you built walls around yourself. You're afraid to let go. But when you say to the Guru, I trust you, you're willing to pull that wall down. That means that Guru does not have to live within the framework of your expectations. This is very important. When you are telling your Guru in your heart that I trust you, whatever you do, I will understand that it's good for me. Then the person in whom this pranava goes in as the Guru realizes that he does not have to live within the framework of your expectations. Everything else in the world has to be according to your expectation. If you feel that the Guru has to be within your limitations, then don't go anywhere near such a person because that man will be of no help to you. He may comfort you. He's not liberation. This person is bondage. Trusting is different. It is not subject to anything else. It means it doesn't matter what you do, I still trust you. This is like an apprenticeship before reaching God. So such a Guru, because of the divine in him at that time, he creates his personality in such a way that people don't know whether to love it or hate it. You know, you will see there are moments if you live in an ashram, one minute you think, oh, I'm really in love with this man. He's so fascinating. Then another time you think that, why is he doing all this? I don't like any of what he is doing. Why isn't he doing like that? However, both these emotions are not allowed to cross certain lines. Just because you're attracted to the Guru doesn't mean that you go and hug him, for example. Just because you're angry with your Guru, because he's upset you in some way, and he will upset you along because he is giving you an experience of what God will do. You can't go around and beat him up or say nasty things. Within those lines, where you're not crossing certain lines, you will be constantly thrashed around. He will find fault with you, will pull you up in so many ways that after some time, you start thinking, why is this person behaving in such a way? This is not a person. It's not a human being. Either he must be the devil or he must be divine. So this you must always remember, because what you have not experienced, it cannot be taught as an intellectual subject or as an academic subject or as a um, concept. You can't do that. Whatever you have to do to take a person from one dimension of experience to another dimension, you need a technique which is a higher level of intensity and energy. You understand this? If a guru needs to take you from your dimension of experience, in which you are hurt when somebody says something rude, and if he yells at you in front of somebody else, you will feel humiliated, he does not fit your stipulations, then you will not be able to go to another dimension of experience. To go to that dimension of experience, you have to trust him and allow him to use a program which will be of a higher level of intensity and energy. That device is what we call guru. That is why the guru-sishya relationship is on energy basis. A guru is touching you in a dimension where nobody else can touch you. So because of this guru-chela-sishya relationship, we have been able to carry on the tradition of a living spiritual experience through the ages. So now, having given you that briefing about that, we are going to Shabari Moksham. First, who was her guru? That we have to understand. Sabari's guru was a person called Matanga Rishi. Matanga means elephant. Where he lived was called Matanga Muni because the elephants roamed around in that place, so it was called Matanga Vana. Why elephant? What is special with an elephant? An elephant makes a sound with the trunk. I must have told you this earlier. And that sound resembles, the trumpet of that elephant is somewhat like the sound of pranava when it comes out in the beginning, when the whole universe starts being created with that first sound vibration of pranava, omkar, and that sounds like an elephant trumpeting. That is why you have Ganapati with an elephant head. Now this Matanga Rishi, he was brought up as a Brahmana. One day while he was driving his cart, he was beating the cart was being driven by a donkey. Because those days they use horses, bullocks, donkeys. And when he was going, the donkey's child was also with it, the foal. And that was also carrying the cart. So what he did, he started beating that baby donkey mercilessly, pushing it while driving. So he hears this donkey saying to the baby cries, why is he hurting me so much? And the donkey says to its baby, what else can you expect of this Chandala? Now Matanga is very upset and he hears what the donkey is saying. So he asks the donkey, why did you call me Chandala? I'm a Brahmana. Then the donkey says, no, your father is a Brahmana, your mother was a Brahmana, but at one time in an intoxicated stage, she embraced a low-born barber. So his offspring, that is his child that you are not a Brahmana. You are the child of this low-born barber. So naturally, Matanga was very, very upset. At that time, he was not a Muni. He wanted to be elevated to the level of Brahmana. And he started doing a lot of penance and austerities. The gods became afraid, and Indra refused to admit him to a Brahmana life. So he was upset but disappointed, but he did not give in to despair. Again, he stood and did penance for 100 years. Again, Indra refused. He said, "You ask any other Siddhi, I'll give you, not this." Why does Indra refuse? Because Indra is your enlightened mind. It is not somebody outside. Indra is your enlightened mind. That enlightened mind has to allow you to pass through the process that is necessary for you to move into the Brahma Jnana. Then only you become a Brahmana. So his own inner Indra, that is his own enlightened mind, decided that he is not yet ready. Then again, Indra refused. So again, he did penance for 1,000 years. Then he balanced on his great toe for so many years. He became skin and bone. And again, when the gods asked Indra to do something, Indra refused to make him a Brahmajnani because he said, "You have not reached that point yet." Why? Because he has a desire to be a Brahmana, to be elevated. Ishan, don't make noise. Because he had a desire to be elevated, and that desire was preventing him from going ahead. Later on, I'll tell you a story about Buddha another day to see how your own desire, even for elevation, becomes as your last obstacle. But Indra said, "I'll give you siddhis. You can move anywhere at will. You can change your shape anywhere at will. And when Rama and Sita come to your hermitage, you will be honored and you will get much renown." So his hermitage was near Rishyamukh. That is near where today it is Shabarimala. And then he did a lot of sadhana there. He had many disciples. And these disciples were some of the great rishis that were in the Dandakaranya forest when Rama went to the forest and met all of them. Some of them were born as Gopikas in Krishnavatara. Now, when he was doing this sadhana, he prayed to, he was very good in Sangeeta Shastra. So, in fact, he has written a book called Brihadeshi, all about Sangeeta Shastra. I'm not going to go into that now. But he was born sometime just before Rama's arrival. So you can imagine how long ago that book was. It has survived millenniums, and it was found in 2 palm leaf manuscripts in the Malayali script, and it was obtained from the Raja of North Travancore some time ago. And this is the Shastra on music that he has written, which is being used to a large extent when people do research into music. And his music he does not just start with the singing. He starts with the light, because he had gone to such a level that he had the Prakasha Bindu. Prakasha Bindu is Shiva. Shiva is the light. Bindu means a point of light in Tantra. And that is what is called Shiva. And when Shiva expands, he becomes many things. This is called Vimarsha, through a vibration. So Prakasha Bindu, that is Shiva, the light, point of light, unites with Vimarsha Bindu. Vimarsha is the point where expansion happens. And that union brings about what is called a vibration called nada. And when we go to Tantra, we can learn about nada. I don't want to waste the time now. But out of nada, he gives um, references to the Veda, in which it is said that without nada, there is no Shruti, there is no Nrittam, there is no Brahma, no Vishnu, no Shiva, no Saraswati, no Lakshmi, Parvati. All creations are because of the original nada. Okay. So when he did so much sadhana with this, with the nada and things like this, he was doing sadhana of Mahasaraswati, not just Saraswati, Mahasaraswati. And this Mahasaraswati was born as his own daughter. She is called Matangi. Matangi or Raja Matangi is the counselor of Mahatripura Sundari. We are not going into that because that will go into Tantra. We'll go into Shabari's life. So this Matanga Muni was a person who reached the Brahmajnana level and had disciples later to whom he was teaching what he knew. At that point, there was a young girl, must have been about 7 or 8 or something, who was very ugly. She was a tribal girl. She was very ugly. And because she was so ugly, the family had put her aside because nobody wanted to look at her because she's so scary. So she grew up feeling unloved and not cared for much. She didn't know anything differently. She was a tribal girl, no mirrors, nothing in those days. And finally, when she was 15 or 16, they were very happy to get her married off to somebody so that she's out of the house. So then she gets married. And in the marriage, they cover the faces. In the evening, they were setting up camp while going to the boy's house, groom's house. And she goes to wash her face in the river. When she goes to wash the face in the river, the groom sees her face in the reflection in the river. And he ditches her, and the whole procession goes away, leaving her alone. Now she was all by herself, and she didn't know what to do, eating the roots and fruits. She's a tribal girl. And one day she was walking along and she heard a beautiful sound coming from an ashram. So she goes and knocks on the door of that ashram, and she asks some people there. Some of half the disciples run away in fear when they look at her because she was so ugly. So she asks them, who is here? They say, our guru stays here. 1 or 2 people who are brave. Can I see him? No, he doesn't see any woman. Get out of here. So Shabari goes back. She doesn't know what to do. And she knows that there is some beautiful music from there. And I must meet this person who is making this music. So what does she do? Every day she will wake up early and she will go there, and she sees that the steps of the ashram outside and the way to the river, all that is not swept and cleaned. So what she did, she would sweep that place completely from the ashram to the river nearby, the Pampa river. And there, when she's sweeping, and then she will decorate it with flowers and rangoli made of flowers and all. And the guru gets up to go for a bath in the river, and he looks at all this and he asks the disciples, how come? Who has made all this? Because till now I never saw anybody so attentive here. So they say, we don't know. By the time we get up, it's already there. So the guru doesn't say anything. Every day he'll get up a little earlier, and whenever he goes, it is still there. One day he decides, because he also is intrigued, he said, something is happening here, I must see. So he will come much earlier than anticipated, and he sees this girl sweeping and putting all this rangoli with flowers. So he is very touched and he asks her, who are you? And she tells him the story of her life. how she's so ugly and how nobody wants her. Everybody is scared of her. So she says, I am a person that nobody wants actually. And he looks at her and he sees the Atma in her. And he thinks she's very beautiful, but she hasn't understood that because she's still identifying with her physical body. And so is everybody else. So he tells her, don't worry, I will give you a mantra. You go on repeating it. One day Rama will come to your house, and when he comes, you will get moksha. So what she would do is every day she would chant that mantra, Ramanama, and she would every day pick fruits and berries, and she would clean that place up, and she'll put rangoli, she'll keep water, everything. But Rama doesn't come. But still she doesn't mind it, because as she does it, her bhakti becomes so much that just that love is enough in her heart. Whom did she love? She loved her guru because he gave her a different perspective. He helped her transform herself so that she saw that the whole world was beautiful. The whole world was filled with Rama, and this was given to her by the Guru. So every day, morning and evening, she would be in Rama Chintana. She would make all this, keep it ready, wait. Rama wouldn't come, so she will sweep everything away. Next day again, she'll pick fresh flowers, fresh fruits. Like this, it went on. And then one day, after Sita was kidnapped by Ravana, Rama and Lakshmana come there searching for her, searching for Sita. They've been asked to go and ask Shabari. Shabari may know something, somebody said. So they go there, and immediately she sees Rama. She's sitting there. By now, she is about 112 or 108 or something years old. So you can imagine, if she was ugly at 7, so ugly, how she would look now. And her guru had also left the body. Many disciples had left the body. She was in charge of looking after the ashram. So she immediately washed Rama's feet. She fell at Rama's feet, washed his feet, gave him water to drink, all the things that we do in puja. Puja, when you do, Argyam Samarpayami, Padyam Samarpayami, like that. Everything she gave, she asked him to sit down. And she said, I have been waiting for you for such a long time because my guru said you will come one day. I could have gone any time, but I hung around only because I wanted to have your darshan and then go. So then she doesn't know whether the fruit she picked is good or not. So she bites a fruit and she's giving it to Rama to eat. At which time Lakshmana gives Rama a look, meaning now this is inchilu, no? That is, it's contaminated by somebody's spit. How can you eat that? Because in India it was very, very mandatory. You don't eat from somebody else's plate. You don't bite half an apple and somebody else eats, because that spit will contain so many infections and things. So Lakshmana looks at Rama. Now what are you going to do? He's saying by his look. Because if you don't eat, she's going to be hurt. If you eat it, you're going to dirty your mouth with her spit. She catches that look and she tells Rama, you're worried whether my mouth will, the spit in my mouth will make you impure, is it? She says, you know how many years I've been doing the Ramanama? From the time I was 15, I've been doing it. I'm now almost, in a few years, I'll be 115 years old if I live that long. Do you think this tongue that has been chanting Ramanama so many years can be impure or dirty? She says. So Rama takes the fruit and eats it. Then he tells her, show me the ashrama. So she takes him on one guided tour of that ashrama, and she shows him the place where the guru, when he became too old, he could not go to the 7 oceans on pilgrimage. So he had brought all these 7 oceans in a small little place, small water body, and he used to bathe in that every day. The garlands which he used with flowers to put it for the gods, they had not faded. Then um, um, all the The plants and trees were growing beautifully. The animals were friendly with each other. There were elephants everywhere. And she said, this is called Matangavana. And she says, since I see you, I will cast off this body. But I wanted you to know that all this has been done by my Guru. And give me permission to go to my Guru, because I've been waiting for my Guru to go to him. Just give me permission. So she says, before going, teach me what is the meaning of bhakti. So Rama teaches her what is bhakti. And then she leaves her body. She says, now can I leave my body and go? So he says, okay. He nods. She leaves her body, which is made of the Pancha Mahabhutas, and her Atma goes to the feet of her Guru. This is the story. I want you to see that one little bit that I have given to Sridhar. He will either send it to you or allow you to see that particular YouTube. And then after that, if we have time, this will only be 3-4 minutes. If we have time, you can ask me questions.
Yeah, we'll play it now, Swamiji.
Yeah.
I'll be sharing the screen. I hope everybody can see it.
See it.
Are everybody able to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
क्या आज्ञा दीजिए
प्रभु,
I hope
क्या
everybody
आप
can
मेरे
hear.
गुरु बनकर
Full screen. Make it full screen.
Yeah, I'll do it.
क्या आज्ञा दीजिए
प्रभु, क्या
There are
आप मेरे
English
गुरु बनकर
subtitles, you can see that.
मुझे अनुग्रहित नहीं करेंगे? इस शरीर को त्यागने से पहले मैं आपसे भक्ति का ज्ञान प्राप्त करना चाहती हूँ।
मैंने अपने गुरुदेव से नवदा भक्ति की महिमा सुनी है, वही आपको सुनाता हूँ।
प्रथम संत सत्संग सुहाना, साधु संग से उपजे ज्ञाना। दूजी भक्ति परम सुखदाता, चित्त लगा सुन मेरी गाथा। तज अभिमान करो गुरु सेवा, ब्रह्म विष्णु शिव सम गुरुदेवा। हो निष्कपट मेरा गुण गायन, करे सो पावे राम रसायन। दृढ़ विश्वास राख निज अंतर, राम मंत्र कर जाप निरंतर। इंद्रिय वश कर चरित संभालो, सद्गुण धार धर्म नित पालो। सारा जगत राम मैं जानो, मुझसे अधिक संतों को मानो। एक संतोष सकल सुख लाए, सपने हूँ गिनो न दोष पराए। सरल प्रकृति निश्चल व्यवहारी, मुझ पर रखो भरोसा भारी। कोई भी स्थिति हो जीवन में, हर्ष विषाद न रखना मन में। नवधा भक्ति हृदय जो राखें, मेरी कृपा का फल वो चाखें।
हे कृपा निधान, आप ऐसे ही अपनी कृपा मुझ पर बनाए रखिए। अब मुझे अपने गुरुदेव के पास जाने की आज्ञा दीजिए।
Finished.
Finished, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
video is finished.
Okay, did you like it?
Yes, Swami.
Yes, Swami.
Okay. So you can see this in the story. You can share that YouTube, and you can look at it comfortably in the privacy of your house also, but I didn't want to give it to you earlier. So such was her devotion to the Guru, because she knew the Guru, she knew the essence of the Guru. It's not this person. She liked the person also, because the pranava flowed through this person and came to me, and therefore I'm grateful for that body for giving me the pranava. That's how she saw it, the essence of it. But by the time she had reached that age, she has grown to love even the disciples. The disciples loved her, the trees loved her, the animals loved her, because she was seeing everything as Hari. And that was because of the grace of the Guru. So when Hari himself in the form of Rama came to her door, she said to him, please give me permission so that I can go to the feet of my Guru. She didn't say give me moksha, but she got moksha nevertheless. And in the chapter, they don't say Rama gave, one of the very few people to whom Rama didn't give moksha. He was a witness to her moksha because she saw Rama in her Guru. So that is the story. So that is the sort of devotion if you have to any Guru. Person may be a bad person, ugly person, doesn't matter. When you are looking at anybody and you give that place of Guru to such a person, and you are prepared to take anything from that person, then without thinking in your usual material mind, then the pranava or the divine will come through that person to you and help you continue your transformation. That is the first thing in the Bhakti Shastra. That is what he means by saying Parama Prema Swarupa Bhaktihi. Parama Prema means it is a love that is unconditional. You give me a corona, I'm not going to say anything against you. You crucify me, I won't say anything against you. I know you know better than me what I need, because I know this body is anyway not permanent. You see my soul and you know what is necessary for my soul to evolve. I trust you completely. That is the first thing, Mahavishwasam, needed in Bhakti. Any questions? Then shall we close?
Yes, Swamiji, can close.
Every day I'll tell you one story about one person, showing the qualities of bhakti which is different from each person. Okay?
Okay.
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 Hari
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Swami.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Very beautiful story, Swami. Thank you.
I'm glad you liked it. I was wondering. Bhakti will be like that. It's very beautiful.
I can share with my children this story.
Yes, you can. All the stories you can share with your children. And you know, you remember, your children are much more perceptive than we adults. You know why? because we are so conditioned by society and time. They are still young and fresh. So you can boldly teach your children. They will pick up some things that they will even teach you.
Yes, Swamiji. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Thank you so much.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Most
Hari Om.
welcome. Hari Om.